How's it going, my people? My name is Nav Walia. This is another brand new episode of Quarter Life Chit Chat, and today is another episode of Bedroom Chats with Nav. Now, I know what you must be thinking. That sounds very, very risque, but it's not. In reality, it's literally just me being a lazy fucktard who's laying in bed as I click record button and I tell you guys stories. Or, at sometimes, talk about controversial topics like I did with the red pill. Today, in the typical quarter life chit-chat fashion, I am going to be telling you a story, but this story, however, is not mine. Disclaimer, this story is a lot more epic than any of my epic stories I have told on this show, such as me running into Satanist on Christmas Day. That story was told on the Halloween special episode, so if you haven't yet, do yourself a favor and give it a listen. But for today, the story I am sharing today is one of epic proportions. A story that encounters literally flying mountains. We're talking a story where a bunch of monkeys overtake a whole kingdom. I'm talking story during which a big bad motherfucker is beaten to a pulp. Today's episode, I am diving into one of the coolest stories from my childhood, from one of my favorite festivals of all time, Diwali. Now, for all my Western listeners, some of you might be aware of what Diwali is, and some of you might not be. So let me enlighten you for a minute. Diwali is the festival light celebrated by billions of people. Most of them are just Indians. Because, if you didn't know, Indians are in billions. So trust me, we Indians know how to procreate. But more importantly, we Indians know how to have the coolest festival with the coolest story. Diwali this year ended up on the same day as Halloween. And I think it's only fair, as a brown kid living in a white country, that if I made an episode on a Western holiday, aka Halloween, it's only fair that I make one on Diwali, right? So without further ado, let's hop into this. Let me give you a little bit of context or backstory. Diwali is celebrated not only by Hindus, or in Hinduism, it is also a very important deal in my religion, which is Sikhism, which I'm sure I will tune into on a later episode. But for now, let's keep the story within the concept and the realm of Hinduism. You see, Diwali is a festival that highlights the themes of good winning over the bad, of light winning over darkness. It's a festival that is based on the story of a loving husband who was able to obtain his wife back from captivity. That's right. It's a festival that is based on absolute chivalry, but has much deeper themes. So, let's get in the story, okay? The story is officially called Ramayana, okay? So, in the long time ago, there was a person named Ram. Ram was the son of a great king of Ayodhya. Ram's dad had a son who was called Bharata. Bharata was a little bit of a dickhead, okay? And the stepmom, in the most typical stepmom fashion, was not a fan of Ram at all. So, Ram, being the older son, was the rightful prince to the kingdom. One day, Ram was out on about in a walk, and he came across Sita, and he was like, whoa. This is the most beautiful woman I have ever seen. They fall in love and they get married. Upon this, knowing that Ram is officially now an adult, he was to be coronated into the kingdom. However, not on stepmommy's watch. What does stepmom do? She manipulates the father. That's right. Who didn't see that shit coming, eh? So she manipulates the dad and she's like, hey, if Ram is such a good kid, why don't you banish him from the kingdom? If he comes back after the banishment's due, you know he's the true successor because he came back to his rightful throne. But if he doesn't come back, then you know he didn't give a shit. But more importantly, if Ram does come back before he is supposed to, then you know he doesn't respect you. So it's kind of a test on 3 prongs for Ram. And the banishment was to be for 14 years. That's right, 14 years, Ram was told that he must be exiled into living in the forest, far, far away. Ram looks at his dad, and he rightfully accepts this duty. Without saying any hesitation, he's like, absolutely, father, I will. And this is one of the themes that ties into Diwali, which is theme of obligation, respect, and acceptance of duty. It was Ram's duty as a good son, as a prince of Ayodhya, to do what he was told is right by the king and more importantly by his parent. So he decides to go on his exile and he takes his wife with him, not before his younger brother, Lakshman, decides to follow him. Lakshman was a devoted and a very kind brother who was always supportive of Ram. So all three of them decide to go into the forest and spend their next 14 years living in the forest in harmony, rightfully accepting the duty that was bestowed upon them. In the meantime, the stepson, Bharata, who's a little dickhead, he was just, fucking around. And during the exile, there was an evil man named Ravan. Okay? And he had his own kingdom, which was called the Lanka. And he was just evil. He would traumatize people. He would, hold people captive. And one day he was just going for like a walk or something in the forest and he came across Sita, Ram's wife. He saw her and he was absolutely mesmerized. As a brutal king, and he will do anything he could to get what he wanted. So he sees Sita, instantly falls in love. He's like, I must make her my wife. However, he finds out that Sita's married. Now, what is he gonna do? You might be thinking, oh, I don't know, maybe he'll kill her. No, he's a little bitch. What he decides to do is he decides to turn himself into this beautiful deer. Sita sees this beautiful deer. Instead of hunting it, she tries to go pet it. And the deer is obviously Ravan. Ravan starts running in the forest, as a deer, and Sita chases until she gets a little too far. And Ravan changes his form back into a human, grabs her by the arm and says, you are now my captive, and he drags her all the way to his kingdom. In the meantime, there was a brave warrior. His name was Hanuman, Hanuman. Hanuman was basically this big-ass, bulky-ass dude, but with the face of a monkey. He was, and you guessed it, he was the god of bravery and strength, because it was told that he was blessed by the gods and nobody on the planet had as much strength and as much courage as Hanuman. Hanuman comes across Ram and he instantly is absolutely impressed by Ram's kindness, his good heart, and more importantly, Hanuman was the only person who was able to recognize the fact that Ram was reincarnate of an ancient Hindu deity. Hanuman, at that moment, decides to become the disciple and become the right-hand man of Ram and will always serve Ram. Which goes in the next theme of Diwali, which is devotion. Ram tells Hanuman how his wife is now kidnapped and does not know where. And Hanuman is, leave it to me, Ram. I will take care of this. Hanuman, having the ability to fly, he flies all across India in lightning fucking speed. Just zooming it until he sees Lanka, Ravan's kingdom, okay? It was a big-ass kingdom, and he sees Sita captive. Hanuman sees her, he rushes back to Ram to tell her that his wife is safe and exactly where she's located. Ram, upon knowing this, is calm, but Hanuman tells Ram that Ravan is a brutal tyrant and he is making advances upon Sita. Wink, wink. Ram, on the other hand, was not worried about this. He looks at Hanuman and he says, I know my wife is safe and she's a strong and brave woman and she will not let any other man ever lay a finger on her in an inappropriate fashion. Ram decides that he must take the fight to Ravan. However, there was a little bit of an issue. Where Ravan's kingdom was located, there was a massive amount of ocean separating them, okay? So, how does Ram cross the ocean? Now you must be thinking, let me guess, they probably built a boat. You're wrong. They didn't. Guess what? Hanuman decides to gather his army of monkey warriors, and what they do is they grab a bunch of rocks and they start dropping them in the ocean. One by one. And doing so, they were able to create a bridge made only of solid rock that led all the way to Ravan's kingdom. During which, Ravan sees that Ram's advancing to get his wife back. He fires a brutal poisonous arrow into the sky that nobody could protect, and it hits Ram right in the chest, who is instantly injured. Upon this, Ram falls and he looks at Ravan and he says, "I will have my wife. Your poison is no match." The Monkey Kings, and along with Lakshman, they take Ram back towards safe zone and they try to care for him, but nobody had the cure. Okay, there was no cure for that poison. It was just too brutal. Nobody seen it. Lakshman runs for days looking for the right herb that can cure the poison. And upon his discovery, he finds that the only herb that can save Ram's life is located in a mountain that is found only and only in Lanka, which is Ravan's kingdom. Now, here's the thing. The bridge that they were forming to Ravan's kingdom is only half formed, so they can't get to it. So how do they get that herb? That's right, Hanuman. Okay, Hanuman flies to Lanka and he goes to the forest and he goes to that mountain. However, Hanuman doesn't know what the herb looks like. Only Lakshman knew. Lakshman tries to describe it to Hanuman, but it was no luck. So what does Hanuman do? That's right, Hanuman literally lifts a whole fucking mountain upon his shoulders and he flies towards Ram. He flies the big ass mountain over his shoulders and takes it to Ram, and where all the monkey warriors along with Lakshman is taking care of Ram. He drops the big ass mountain and he's like, "There, what can you do with this?" And Lakshman climbs that mountain, gets the herb, makes a paste, gives it to Ram, and Ram begins to heal. Within a couple days, Ram is healed, and that's where the next theme of Diwali comes into play, which is courage and resilience. Because Hanuman, instead of coming under the pressure of not knowing which herb to do, what did he do? He had courage in himself, and he was resilient and did not take failure as an option, and simply homemade decided to literally lift a whole fucking mountain. A whole mountain. Ram is now okay, and the warrior monkeys, Hanuman and Ram, they climb one more time into Lanka. They literally finish that bridge. There's an onslaught of, arrows being fired at them from Lanka by Ravan's warriors. And Ram just knew that he will succeed. Why? And here's the next theme of Diwali. Faith. Ram had faith not only in himself, but the people he was surrounded by, and more importantly, in his faith with his wife. He knew that Sita is waiting for Ram, and he will not let anybody's faith down. So he knew he will keep fighting until he dies. Hanuman takes this opportunity as the bridge is getting built to fly into Lanka and see exactly where Ravan is hiding Sita. He tricks Ravan's warrior and he's like, "Hey, I surrender. I'm the good guy. I'm trying to finesse you, and I'm trying to finesse Ram, and I'm here for you guys, and I want to fight for you." Ravan comes to Hanuman and he's like, "Oh, good, you've chosen a good side." Because here's the thing. Ravan was massive dickhead, but he also had a huge ego. He thought he was literally the GOAT. And what does Ravan do? In his ego, he gets carried away when Hanuman's like, "You're the coolest person on the planet. I know Ram doesn't have shit on you." And Ravan, instead of thinking it's a trick, he feeds his ego and says, "Oh yeah, that's right. It only makes sense." So, Ravan slowly declares, via talking, exactly where he's keeping Sita. In the meantime, Hanuman, while he was bending on one knee, he gets up and he's like, "Haha, dumb fuck." And he tries to fly off. Ravan realizes what's been done and he changes his form into a big, massive warrior that he was. We're talking 200 fucking feet high. And he grabs Hanuman by the arm, he throws him to the ground, and Ravan's warriors chain Hanuman. To punish Hanuman for tricking Ravan, they light his goddamn fucking tail on fire. But guess what? Hanuman, being the badass he is, he breaks the chain and he flies off. And instead of putting away the fire that's on his tail, what does he do? That's right, he burns goddamn Lanka to the ground. He literally flies through Ravan's kingdom, burning everything down by his fucking tail. And that is the next theme that is involved in Diwali, which is using other people's negative energy, other people's crimes, other people's wrongdoings upon you, and using them to your advantage and seeing the positive side. Now you might be wondering, well, Nav, what's the positive side? The positive side is Hanuman was able to melt away the solid gold defense walls that he had, so Ram and the army were able to enter the kingdom. Okay, now Ram decides to do that. He enters the kingdom. There's an epic fight, and Ravan is obviously beaten the fuck down, okay, and killed. And Sita is happy to see Ram, and she hugs him, and she's like, I knew you would come. And Ram goes, well, as long as you have faith in me, I'll always be here. They travel back into their home territory, and their 14 years of exile has also come to an end. So it is only fair that Ram now returns to Ayodhya with his younger brother who fought by his side, and Hanuman, his devoted warrior and his right-hand man, along with his best friend. They get to Ayodhya, and the people, who are just so fucking upset, from Bharta, the stepson of Ram's dad and his stepmommy, they're so happy to see Ram, the devoted and the rightful king of Ayodhya. They welcome him with, guess what? Divas. Now, to all my listeners, you must have seen, if you ever interacted with a brown person or seen anything associated with Bollywood or anything Indian, you must have seen these small clay, small bowls, and there's like a candle or cotton in there that's always burning. There's oil in there. That's what divas are. Okay, they're small candles made of clay, and we usually put like olive oil or sunflower oil and a cotton in it. It's make home light, because back in that era, that's what the citizens and the people of Ayodhya did to welcome Ram. They lit up Ayodhya to welcome him. And that is the festival of life. But the story doesn't end there. Here's now the twist. Upon coming to Ayodhya, the stepmommy stops Ram, and she's like, well, your wife was kidnapped by the tyrant, and we know what kind of shitty things he's done, and Sita is here without a scratch on her. How do we know that she hasn't, wink wink, fooled in the bedroom with Ram? And Ram looks at her, and he's like, my wife is devoted to me and solely me, and I don't need to have any suspicions of Sita. Sita looks at Ram, and she's like, this is okay, like, I'm happy to prove my innocence. She sees like bunch of these pieces of wood, and she lights it on fire. The fire is blazing. And what does Sita do? She decides to walk into the fire and sit. Now you might be wondering, why is that? In the Hinduism culture, it is said that the fire is the most pure thing, as it's the only thing that can banish evil, but is also the only thing that can purify anything, right? Like, look at Ravan's, kingdom. It was the most evil, most notorious kingdom of all time. But it was fire that broke it all down, that purified all of kingdom from all the negativity, all the hateful shit Ravan's done, all the fucked up shit he's done, all the murders he had committed, and so on and so forth. So Sita goes and sits in the fire, and instead of burning, Sita remained unharmed. And it goes to show that Sita was such a pure of heart and innocence that not even fire could purify her, because there was no impurity within her. Which goes into the next theme of Diwali, which is of purity, of cleanliness, of goodwill. Which is why on Diwali, people, they clean their house to make it nice. They throw away any junk, any garbage prior to getting Diwali. And then on top of it, during Diwali, everybody wears brand new clothes, and they always wish everybody happy Diwali and best wishes, even their most hated people, because as a way to get rid of ill will from their hearts. Now, back to the story. During this, the stepmommy is like, oh, I guess Ram will stay, and Ram now rightfully becomes the king. And that, my friends, is the story of Ramayana. But you might be wondering, why is this story so memorable, outside of religious reasons, right? Now, here's the thing. Here's a little bit of twist. Almost of every religion, the stories that are told within that religion are often associated geographically with the country or the place where it's originated from, right? So, like, all the Greek stories are associated with, like, Greek warriors who are from Sparta, who are from Athos, which became Athens, and so on and so forth. And Ramayana takes place in India, obviously. But remember in the story I was telling you how there was large amounts of water separating the kingdom of Ravan, which was called Lanka, from Ram? That bridge of water is the water between India and Sri Lanka, the country. That's right, cuties. Lanka is actually based on Sri Lanka. The bridge of water separating them is the tip of India that overlooks into Sri Lanka. And when you look at the topographical map, you can see like in the water separating India and Sri Lanka, there's a little bit of a strait, right? Little bit of land that you can see over the water. You know, if it's picture taken via satellite, you can see that there's landmass, like kind of like a bridge that leads into Sri Lanka. That was the bridge that is said to be made by the monkey warriors, by Ram, by Lakshman, and so forth. And remember the mountain that Hanuman was able to lift off? That mountain is the mountain that is found on South India. And along through that, the mountain had so many herbs, as it was said in Ramayana, and it has so much life that it was able to spread life. And hence, why South India is supposed to have so much vegetation of luscious trees, of palm trees, coconut trees, and absolute greenery, and a lot of mountains everywhere, is because of Hanuman. So if you're one of those people who is into the connection of religious stories, or stories in general within a culture associating it with natural geography, Ramayana has that. And that brings me to the end of this episode. I wanted to discuss a little bit about Diwali and the history behind it, but more importantly, the story. And I hope you enjoyed listening to the story. I'm sure it's a nice switch of listening to somebody else's story for once and not mine. Hopefully you got to learn a little bit about Hinduism, a little bit about festival. And on the next episode, hey, maybe I'll dive into Diwali and what it means to us Sikhs. Maybe I'll dive into the goings and ins and outs and the festivities associated with Diwali. And along with that, maybe I'll talk about how I celebrated my Diwali. P.S. involves a lot of fireworks and a lot of loud noises and a lot of sweets. Thank you for listening. Do me a favor, give the show a follow, give it a rating, follow the social of the show, share with your friends. Tune in next week with another episode. Much love. Hasta la vista. Bye-bye.